hate summer. I hate her crooked teeth. I hate her 1960s haircut. I hate her knobby knees. And I hate her cockroach-shaped splotch on her neck. I hate the way she smacks her lips before she talks. And I hate the way she sounds when she laughs. She's like the wind. I hate this song!
2009's 500 Days of Summer, directed by Marc Webb, starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Zooey Deschanel, Jeffrey Anrid, Chloe Grace Moretz, Clark Gregg, and so many more. Let's take a quick look.
Everyone, this is Summer, my new assistant. Summer, everyone, Summer.
In college, they called me perfectly adequate Hanson.
You used to call me anal girl. I was very neat and organized.
He likes you.
Okay.
I think you're interesting, and I'd like for us to be friends.
I'm in love with Summer. This is not good.
I just don't feel comfortable being anyone's girlfriend.
What happens if you fall in love?
There's no such thing as love, it's fantasy.
How's your weekend?
It was good.
I think I missed something. She said it was good, emphasis on the good. She basically said she spent the weekend having sex with some guy she met at the gym.
Did she say hey instead of hi? I mean, because you know that means that she's a lesbian, right?
Hey.
Hi.
You son of a bitch. Did you bang her?
No.
What, job?
No.
Hand job? No jobs, I'm still unemployed.
Hi.
If any jobs come up, see ya.
Ooh, that looks pretty doable.
Are you her boyfriend?
It's not that simple.
We're young, might as well have fun while we can. I'm not really looking for anything serious.
What's going on here?
We're just friends.
No, this is not how you treat your friend. Kissing in the coffee room, shower sex.
You'll get over her. I don't want to get over her. I want to get her back.
I try to laugh about it, hiding my tears in my eyes, 'cause boys don't cry.
I'm going to the supply room. Do you guys need anything?
I think you know what I need. Toner?
So welcome back to the Cult of Films. This week we're talking about one of my absolute favorite coming-of-age films of all time. And that's going to probably be kind of an argument, or maybe not, between myself and my special guest tonight. Is this a coming-of-age film? Is this one of the best rom-coms of all time? Well, we're going to talk about that for around the next 60 minutes or so, but I am not doing this alone. I have two panelists tonight, two very talented people I'm very excited to do this review with, and first off, that is Dana Roach. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you very much for having me on. I'm excited to talk about a movie that I'm a really big fan of. I mostly talk about Commander and write about Commander. You can find me on EDH Rec as a writer. You can hear me on EDH Rec podcast talking about Commander. And you can hear me twice a week on a different podcast, CMDR Central, also talking about Magic the Gathering Commander.
Perfect. And also, Zachary Taylor. Thank you, sir, for joining us as well.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to talk about this movie as well, because I've seen it at different stages in my life and interpreted it differently multiple times, so should be good. But we're Commander Social. For Twitter, it's at commandersocial.com, and you can also find me spouting out random crap on Twitter at Z4CK38.
Excellent.
So, yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and so we all met each other through Magic the Gathering, but I know these two are just as big as movie fans as I am, so I couldn't wait to talk about, again, like I said, one of my favorite films of all time. I mean, really, it even kind of breaks, transcends the genre. I just absolutely love this film, and let's kind of scale it back, talk about Marc Webb. Marc Webb is a filmmaker that made some movies, but to me, this is his film.
Yeah, this was his first movie, and that's a pretty impressive first move out of the gate there. But he hasn't done much since, I don't think, of note. There's those two Spider-Man movies that were not the Sam Raimi ones and not the current Marvel ones.
Right.
So that's not very auspicious.
A couple other things that he's done, and I don't know, it's just not great. I think where the home run was hit on this movie was like one of like I believe his brother was one of the writers as well, so that kind of like helped him. But he'd done a bunch of music videos and stuff before that were okay.
And talk about a budget. Why? I mean, this thing was a $7.5 million budget, and it just killed at the box office. Usually on cult of films, I'm talking about things that are either just breaking even or losing money. This thing actually, from a $7.5 million budget, it made $60.7 million, which is, in the grand scheme of things in Hollywood, is not like a huge amount. But I mean, this was definitely a sleeper hit, especially with that low of a budget.
Yeah, and you caught a couple of actors kind of on the upswing in their career, too. That was really as Joseph Gordon-Levitt was taking off in his career. Yep. That was kind of pre-New Girl, Zooey Deschanel. She's just kind of on the upswing as well. So you kind of capture both of those two just as they're taking off. That does a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah, I agreed. It's really cool to have seen what they've continued on and done after, this movie. Zooey Deschanel's in all sorts of things now, and she was kind of an it girl for a while with New Girl, and Joseph Gordon-Levitt's doing the whole hit record thing where he's like basically boosting like small time type creators of animation, music, and other stuff. Not to mention all the great movies. I mean, he was in Inception, which is another film that I totally love.
He's in a lot of the Nolans. He was in the Batman.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Nolan franchise. I was just looking up Zooey Deschanel because I just wanted to see where the happening happened in her career, and it happened in 2008. So I'm glad that that film could have really ruined her because that film is of course a cult hit also, but probably for a completely different reason than why 500 Days of Summer is, because it's just ridiculous, right? And her performance in that is probably one of the worst things I've ever seen on the screen.
No. Oh, I don't know. We need to do something. We can't just stand here as an uninvolved observer on the news who watches the crime happen and not do something. We're not assholes.
Just a second.
To see her in this role, I mean, you could argue this was kind of like the role that she was born to play, right?
Yeah, I mean, is there anybody that's more kind of crafted to be a manic pixie dream girl than Zooey Deschanel? I don't think there is. She's
like the prototype.
Character. Yeah, absolutely. And she's also the kind of girl that the guy that Tom is, and if you were ever kind of Tom at a point in your life, she was the girl you wanted to meet cute with in an elevator.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's why this film is just so relatable, and I think that's why it was such a smash hit, because it's kind of peers, so to speak, like in Adventureland or something that I love, and I know Dana, you love Adventureland as well.
It's a great movie.
The kind of stereotypical, what I think makes this completely not a romance or a rom-com. I mean, even the narrator right off the bat at the beginning kind of tells you, sets the stage, like this is about these two getting together, but it's not really going to end like you think it's going to end. And if it was more of a stereotypical on-rails rom-com, they would have met, they would have had this conflict, they would have broken up and found some way to get back together and to grow as a couple. That's why I think this was more of a coming-of-age film than a romance.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
For sure. Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it in terms of coming-of-age movie. I would definitely not have called it a rom-com, but hearing you describe it as that makes absolute sense, particularly because so much of Tom's character arc, and it's a relatively subtle arc, but he's not necessarily a very likable or mature guy, particularly in the beginning.
Sure. And
his arc is kind of figuring out how to not be kind of subtly crappy. And I mean, that's very much a coming of age kind of character arc for sure.
Yeah. Zach, I mean, like I said, I think we all kind of related to, we've all been Tom, for lack of a better term. We've all been Tom at one point or another. Is that how, do you think that's why this film was so successful and so beloved, because it was so easy for everyone to just kind of put themselves in Tom's shoes?
I think that's a lot of it. I do still think that a lot of people, when they originally saw it, still were like, no, this is totally a rom-com, but I can like place myself in it. And it's real easy to get that out of it on a surface level if you're not, someone who maybe watches movies a little bit more and thinks a little more deeply in these things. I definitely relate to the character. Like I've had the same thing that happens to him happen to me twice, and it was with the same girl, right? Like we all go through these lessons and having to learn, and not just men or boys either. I think girls go through the same thing, right? Understanding what love really is as opposed to what we think it should be.
Dana, you mentioned that Summer is just basically kind of on surface level. I feel like she's portrayed as the stereotypical manic pixie, but I think like once the film kind of unveils itself for what it is, I think that she has we don't know what she is because the film's not even really about her. It's about Tom, and it's about
Correct.
Tom's growth and this very specific time in a person's life that these kind of things happen to, and whether you want it to happen or not, I think it just, that's why it's so damn relatable. We all get hurt, we all find this person that we just have so much like we just hold on this pedestal, and we the affections are never kind of given back the way that we want them to. So I think that it's not unfair to say that she is, because it's absolutely, that's what she is portrayed as, because that's through Tom's eyes, that's how he sees her.
Yeah, that's the super important part here. This isn't a romantic comedy where you're seeing things from two people's point of view.
Angles.
So you're expecting two developed characters. You're seeing things from Tom's eyes and his point of view, and especially because he's not a very mature person or not very good at dating, or I don't know how you would describe it, but there's actual scenes where like she's asking him questions about things he's passionate about, and he doesn't reiterate that.
Right.
His first introduction to her, the first things he talks about are all her physical characteristics. Like, you're getting his kind of bad boyfriend POV the entire movie, and it's subtle. He's not like a complete jerk or anything, but like he's subtly not a very good boyfriend, and that's part of that. The fact that we don't know very much about her as a person is in part because he doesn't really know very much about her as a person, because he's not maybe good at figuring those things out and doesn't really know how to look beyond the scope of what he wants.
And I feel like that's echoed I think he says it multiple times in the movie. He's like, I love how she makes me feel.
Yes,
and like,
it's about him.
To me, and Dan, I know you have a family and all that. Love isn't just a feeling, right? It's an action. It's an engaging in something with someone else, right? And that's not something he does with her. He, like you said, he constantly ignores kind of what the signs that she's trying to put out there. And the thing is, I think that and a lot of the misunderstanding of the movie is a lot of people feel that she is intentionally this one-dimensional manic pixie dream girl intentionally, right? Like they did that specifically not because it was seen through Tom's eyes, but that was her actual character, when in fact, like you said, we don't know hardly anything about her. It's all through Tom's eyes. And I think something interesting that I saw in the movie is like the color blue is usually associated with her. And there's this scene in when he's first in her apartment, he's looking around, and there's this like little tree with all these origami birds, and there's one red one, and it zooms in on that one, and the rest are blue. And to me, that signified that Tom was like, yeah, this she's the one, she's the red bird that's for me. When in reality, she was one of the bluebirds the whole time. She was just any other girl. There was nothing special about her. I mean, everyone's special, but there's nothing different about her than other girls except what Tom had placed on her in his mind. And they even go in that black and white montage saying average height, average weight, average everything. She's just another girl.
Every scene that we see is through the POV of Tom. It's not even just Summer. It's the entire movie shot as you know, as one of the most brilliant scenes, which I know we'll talk about later, but like a reality versus expectation. And you know, his friend Mackenzie, played by Jeffrey Arnett, he's played as just like the kind of comic relief and kind of the dummy friend, because that's how Tom sees it, because we don't even we never get to leave the room if Tom's not in it, so we're always tethered to him as an outside observer, but living through him. And you know, his other friend is he comes off as just like, oh, I'm the really supportive, you know, roommate or friend or whatever, because that's how he sees him. He sees Clark Gregg as the dopey boss, because that's all that we get to, that, you know, that's what he's thinking of, and that's how he's framing these people in these interactions because of what's going on with him. And I don't think that Tom's a bad character. I think think Dana, like you said, he's just very immature with this particular aspect of his life. And even though this, you know, near killed him, right? Because we've all been there, we've all survived. You know, we feel like we're dying, but it's one of the most important transformative, you know, aspects of life that one could go through, and he definitely shows that he grew from it, you know, towards when the movie comes to a close.
I mean, not only, he's definitely not a bad character. He's just 25, and I was definitely much less conscientious of other people's life and, you know, kind of inner fire and who they were as a person at 25. I was much more self-centered in my interactions with people, and I mean that's just, I think, how people tend to be, not always, but I think that's a very realistic portrayal of how people are at that age when they're dating. It's probably definitely how I was. And not only are we getting this just exclusively from Tom's point of view, Tom isn't a reliable narrator.
Right.
Exactly.
He's not lying to us necessarily. This isn't like Usual Suspects where you can't believe what he's saying.
Sure.
But he's very much lying to himself in a lot of different ways. And you see multiple instances of that where, like, he's remembering things incorrectly or seeing them through a different lens. In hindsight, you know, looking back at it 100 days later versus when it happened. So yeah, that really changes how you see the other characters, especially. It's his point of view, and it's his unreliable point of view.
Sure.
And that's something I kind of want to touch on too, like, because of his view, and like that's why I don't really like the beginning where it's like, yeah, this is a fictitious story, but it's really about someone for real, and it's like, especially some girl, and that's like, bitch, and like to me that like that pushes the movie pushes the viewer to want to dislike Summer. Sure. And that's something that I think is, I don't think she's a dislikable character. I think she's
not at all.
She's how she was written, right? She's a one-dimensional character. That's how Tom sees her. But I think the beginning credits where it shows, you know, them as children growing up and going through stages, it's trying to establish that these are just both regular people, right? Like neither worse than the other in any way. I don't know, it's just an interesting juxtaposition.
The thing you touched on there, Zach, in the very beginning, like literally the movie opens with some text on screen. It says, the following is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to persons living or dead is purely coincidental, especially you, Jenny Beckman, bitch. That's the first thing you get in the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think to a degree that's kind of important, because I've kind of been there when you're dumped and you're in that, like, trying to pick up the pieces and figure out what's going on. Tom's brain isn't working correctly. He's unreliable, and yours tends to be pretty unreliable too. Like, I've had that thought process about the person who dumped me. It's not fair or accurate or correct, but it's a real thing that you do and think in that moment.
Absolutely.
No.
Yeah, it's just it's shot as a series of, you know, it's non-linear, so it's a lot of flashback, a lot of flash forward, all set in these literal 500 days of he and this girl interacting in each other's lives. So all the scenes, it almost has like a dreamlike quality to it. And I dare compare it to a film that I like, but I know a lot of people don't like, and that's kind of Vanilla Sky, where you go back and you don't know exactly what's raw, what's true, and what's hyper real. Because like thinking back, as a memory, like this whole film shot as a memory. So even his interactions with his own younger sister, she's shown as this like wise Yoda figure, because that's just like,
that's how he sees her.
Yeah, it's how he sees her. He doesn't want to talk to because his friends are just like, are just going to be like, just get over it and go get back on the horse, like get out there and kind of move on. So he wants, even though that her advice is kind of similar, she just comes off as more wise as this outside entity. And I think, again, giving a lot of credit to Marc Webb, especially for his first outing, there's so much nuance to how this film is shot and how it's portrayed as this, like you think of like a Memento that's shot very, non-linear, and it could be a mess. And, Christopher Nolan made that film, and in a lesser filmmaker's hand, that film could really fall apart. And I think this one could have too, but it's just handled with such deftness that it's very surprising that it's A, from the filmmaker it's from, and B, that it's his first outing. So it's very impressive.
Yeah, the nonlinear storytelling in this, I know that confused some, but I think it's just amazing, right? Because it lets you juxtapose, well, here's a scene in the beginning where everything's great, everything's looking good, and then closer to 500, it's like, oh, well, here's where the cracks are really starting to show. And I think the truth in it is the median between these like love-struck happy scenes and these like real sad scenes. And I really like that they did it that way.
And since we're sitting with Tom, everything he ramps up the glow and the kind of rom-com filter whenever it's he and Summer are around. Everything is shot really beautifully, very calming, very soothing. When he's just in his office, everything just kind of looks flat and normal. And then they ratchet up the blue hues and the gray hues when he's going through it, even on the I guess the time card or the date card, whatever kind of day he's having. It's color coded, which is another, very nuanced, cool thing.
Yeah, I think one of the cooler color codings in this movie is with it's Greg Clark Gregg. Yeah, I get confused which way, but
two first names.
He sees him, in the first two or in the first and the last scene that he's in with him. He's wearing this like real pastel kind of dopey suit, and he's like, yeah, this is my dopey boss who doesn't know anything. But when he goes into his office and thinks he's about to get fired, Clark Gregg's wearing this like real dark brown, like serious suit. And I think that portrays, again, how Tom is viewing people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and they established that really early on, his kind of unreliability too. First of all, his 12-year-old sister is the one coming to talk sense into him.
Right.
Which kind of establishes his maturity level to a degree. And then there's this voiceover where he's talking about, his notions of love being formed by British pop music and The Graduate. And like my immediate reaction, because I'd forgotten they revisit that Graduate bit at the end. But I was like, man, if you formed your notions on, finding the one and falling in love from The Graduate, you clearly didn't watch the last 30 seconds of that movie.
Right.
But that's a big deal. Like, that tells you a lot about Tom. Like, man, if he didn't get what The Graduate was kind of implying there at the end, that tells us something about him as a narrator, and that thread continues throughout the rest of the film.
He's a romantic. He wants to see everything with rose-colored glasses.
Romantic, very much.
Yep.
I thought The Graduate was his misunderstanding of The Graduate was kind of interesting, because I feel like, generally speaking, amongst like when this movie came out and talks amongst friends and whatnot, that this movie's generally misunderstood too, where they're like, yeah, it's not your typical rom-com thing, but it's like, yeah, he got in a relationship and it went bad, and then at the end, he grew and he gets a new girlfriend named Autumn, and it's super good. And it's like, well, I don't know if that's exactly how you want to, define this movie, right? I thought that was an interesting comparison.
So you didn't like the way they wrapped it up, where he kind of, it's a little cheeky, right?
I like the way they wrapped it up. But I think that some of my other friends were like, yeah, it's like him totally rebounding, and and like it's not like there was a lesson for him to be learned. Like, his lesson was, oh, he just needs to get over this one girl and then move on to the next girl. And I don't know. Like, honestly, as far as like growth in Tom, like, I definitely think it's a coming of age film, but there's really, other than Tom starts dressing nicer and Tom slicks back his hair and Tom does approach this one girl, and when, he he'd and hawed between like talking, like one of his best friends had to out his feelings to Summer, there's not a lot of indication, in my opinion, that he did actually grow. You want him to, as a viewer, to have grown, but maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
Well, I think, but that's how you kind of grow in life, right? You don't make, usually anyway, that giant leap. It's just the little bitty ones. So we're at the point in his life where he's gone from being here, and he's taken that small step. He's gotten a little more assertive. He's decided to pursue that career that he really dreams of versus just kind of letting life pass him by, writing those greeting cards. He's, taken a little bit of command of what's going on as an apartment. He's changed how he's dressing. He's taken those first baby steps. That doesn't mean he's not going to still blow it, because we haven't seen any indication that he's learned to not be quite so subtly self-centered. But maybe he has. Like there's the possibility, at least, that he's going to move forward and be in a healthy relationship. And that wasn't a thing, at the beginning of the movie. He wasn't in a place to do that. So maybe now he is.
Yeah, I think it shows that, like, he's just this hipster out of college, right? And he's just like, oh, I'm this, I could be an architect, but I'm just going to be ironic and go write greeting cards, and how dare, and listen to the Smiths on my headphones, and, just be the quintessential manic pixie girl, guy, idol, right? Yeah. So he's just like so beside himself during the entire relationship that she's just not just eating it up, right? Because he's just like, I am putting out there exactly what this type wants, without having to really grow or do something of substance, where she's just like, why are you here if you could be an architect? She says that throughout the film. She's like, you could be a good architect, or he could, she's introducing to friends at a party. She's like, here's Tom, he could be a really good architect if he wanted to, and then he makes just some kind of hipster joke about it.
She looks so disappointed when he does that then too. Yeah. Which is way more concern for his well-being as a person than he ever expresses for hers.
Exactly.
Like I think there could very easily be a parallel movie from her point of view, where you see things from her half of the story, because she's kind of undergoing a similar thing, where she's maybe getting a little bit less, I don't know if the word is pessimistic or not, but like she does, just like he learns from their relationship and hopefully makes a few gains to being a better person. She definitely changes a little bit too, and that's what allows her to make that next step. I really like that a lot, that she's a genuinely good person. I think she's like several steps in her life past where he is, and she's now able to be in what appears to be a healthy marriage and relationship by the end. Maybe he's getting there, I'm not sure, but she's kind of taken her own journey off screen.
Right. Yeah, I would definitely watch that movie.
Yeah, right. Zach, you said that it doesn't show. We don't know, right? We don't know if it really worked yet. But I think one of the biggest tell signs that at least that he's willing to change, or at least willing to take a next step, is he's talking with his buddy, and right when Summer gets there, and he's just like, oh well, why don't you just go ask her out? He's like, he just kind of scoffs, because he puts in a little bit of time, and she winds up kind of approaching him, coming to him. She makes all the first moves, kisses him in the copy room, all this stuff. But then he, when he meets up with Autumn at the end, who's played by Minka Kelly, for all you Friday Night Light fans out there, he asks her, even though that they're already like have this conflict, like their base is a conflict because they're both going for the same job, but he asks her to coffee, and then he even looks okay. He doesn't look completely Tom about it when she declines at first, and then
that's a big deal. Yeah, I think the how he handles what appears to be rejection at first, because earlier in the movie when he thinks that Summer is rejecting him, or like he asks how her weekend went or something, and she says it went really good, and he's mentally doing these gymnastics that she like bones some guy at the gym and calls her a skank, just because she gave that one answer. Whereas now at the end, when he's basically he's he thinks he's getting shot down. He's like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. And like walks away. He's not mad or upset or taking it personally or lashing out. That's also a nice little sign that he's kind of advanced as a person.
I think it was huge too that he actually had it in himself, because all the other bad interactions, when she breaks up with him at the diner, he just like runs away. They meet up again on the train, and then after the party, after he sees that she's engaged, he walks out without saying anything. So it's another, in my opinion, it's another huge thing to where they're sitting on the park bench towards the end of the film, and she's walking away, and he's just going to let it happen again. But he makes himself have closure. He stops her and says, "You know what, Summer? I hope that you are happy." And I feel like that kind of allows him to move on too. Like
that closure was something that he needed. I've definitely read like online, like randomly, like sometimes there's debate as to whether she's actually even there or not, or whether that was just a conversation he had in his head with himself, basically, to move on. Because either way, he had to have that moment with her, real or not, to continue on in his life.
And again, that's an example of her being concerned about him. She is there, assuming she's really there. She's at the place she knows he's going to be to see how he's doing. She's much more empathetic to his circumstances and him as a person than he is towards her, particularly early on.
And she has to be so brutal about it too, to kind of force him into that position where he's just like, I just don't understand. And let me get it straight too. Like in 500 days, they have this giant relationship. She breaks up and then gets engaged and gets married within 500 days. That's pretty fast. Although, she kind of explains it, and she's just like, he's just like, you were the girl that never wanted a boyfriend, and now you're married. And she just knew, and she kind of has to be that vicious about it, where she's just like, it makes sense to me, because I felt what I never could feel with you. She always had this like, you're cool, but we're just young and dumb and kind of, we don't know what's going on. So let's just, hang out and go to IKEA. And he's just like hanging on every single word and trying to make fetch happen, trying to force this thing to be something. And she's just like, she kind of knew from the beginning. And I guess if you want to say that, like, her characters at some points are played a little maliciously, but that might be just because I've been in that situation before, and you're out of that relationship, you meet up with that person again, and anything, whether it be a handhold or a hug that lingers too long, you read into it, right? You're just like, oh, I'm back in, you're back on the shit. And it's just like, she like grabs his hand at the end. And I know she kind of means it as a comfort, but it almost you could tell it in his face, the way Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays it. It almost pulls him back in, and then he kind of forces himself out of it.
Unlike him, she understands the end of The Graduate.
Right.
Like, that's the turning point in their relationship to a degree, when she has to force herself to face the music, because, she's not a perfect character. I wouldn't say she's been leading him on, but she very clearly has been aware the entire time that there isn't that thing there towards him that he has towards her.
Right.
And that's also like, we talked about having been Tom in a situation. I've been Summer before, where you're in that relationship with somebody that they like you more than you like them, and you should get out of it, and you don't. Like, I've been on that end of it too.
Yeah. That's why I like when he goes on that blind date, and he ends up in the diner again with this girl, and he's like, going over the whole thing, and she's like, let me get this straight. She told you all this up front, and you expected something different to happen. And it's like, he's like, and he just has no response to it, because it's true. She never led him on. She was always up front with, how this was going to be. And like, he was just too in what he thought was love to see that, or to understand that. He was like, well, I can convince her that love is real. I mean, he even says he's going to try, early on.
Which is also another example of him kind of not considering her and what she wants, and or really listening to her words at all, to a degree.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about probably one of my favorite scenes in cinematic history. And it's just so like quaint but just executed so well. And that is when she invites him over to the, unbeknownst to him, I guess it would be engagement party.
That's what it seemed like.
Yeah, they kind of reconnect. This is after the breakup, but they share this kind of special evening together. Again, like once you watch it and once you kind of seen the movie and then you kind of look at that scene of them hanging out at the wedding, it's very platonic coming from her, but exactly what he's feeling and hanging on every word and smell and look and all this. But just the scene of him walking, split screen, him walking up the stairs in two different shots, and it literally says expectation, reality, and it's just heartbreaking. Like, oh my god,
because you've been there.
I've been there so many times. Like,
that's brilliant, that scene.
The music choice is perfect for it too.
And the difference too it's not even like a catastrophic difference from A to B. It's just like the little subtle differences between the reality and the expectation. And I think that's what makes it such like a knife to the gut.
And that scene also, like, because Tom is an unreliable narrator, it makes me wonder about some of the other split scenes too, because split scenes are used multiple times in the movie. And the one that stands out to me the most is, right after, he punches that guy out in the bar or the restaurant or whatever, and he doesn't understand why she's mad at him. And he goes home, and he's laying in bed and he's like, playing with the phone, and it splits the screen and it shows her just kind of laying in bed and staring at the phone. And, at first glance, it's like, well, maybe that's probably what she's doing. But it's like, I wonder when I see that now, is that what Tom hopes she's doing, maybe?
Oh, wow.
Not like what's actually happening?
Sure. Everything is unreliable. Everything is kind of a dream, because it can't even show her without him on the screen. We never get a chance alone. So it very well could have been exactly, she's probably just, sitting there, thinking about me, or she can't sleep. But she does show up to his house. So there is some evidence that at least something like that, she was doing, maybe out of pity, who knows. But just, and I mean, I alluded a little bit to the music, especially for that, the big scene, the scene that I love so much, but the music is just about as an important character throughout the narrative. I mean, it just is. Whoever chose all the songs for this film was just brilliant. I mean, it has some great hits, and this is one of the most downloaded soundtracks cinematically ever.
It's not just great songs; it's great songs that make sense in the context of Tom as a character. Like, there's a lot of sad white boy music that he listens to. And I mean, I'm a fan of sad white boy music. I get it. But the things he does, when you're listening to the Smiths on your headphone in the elevator, like, you're listening to them because you like the Smiths, but you're also kind of listening to the Smiths in the elevator because you want Zooey Deschanel to say, hey, the Smiths, I love them.
He was hunting.
It's kind of performative in his part. And I've done that too, where, like, you want the girl to like the thing that you like.
Turns out girls don't like magic that I know, sadly.
But like, he does it even more overtly later on with the Smiths, where he's playing them loudly at his desk.
I love that scene.
And there's a bit later on where they're in the record store and he's flipping through, and he makes that comment about how he doesn't want to live in a world where Spearmint isn't famous. I like Spearmint; they're a good band, but I get why they're not famous.
Right?
You're making that comment to the girl, so you seem interesting, and like you're a person with interesting taste in music who gets things other people don't get. Like, that's performative too. That's him trying to use music again as a way to connect with her, or make himself seem cool to her.
And I like how the music, like, sometimes in certain scenes, like, the music's almost like narrating exactly what's happening. And I think that the choices are just really good. And the performative stuff that you're talking about, Dan, like, I've definitely done that. I'm like, I'm like, oh man, I'm driving by this girl's house that I know, or she's standing around. I'm like, oh yeah, let me put on something that seems real deep. Let me, like, I brought this book that I bought when right after I graduated college. It's called The Hipster Handbook, and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna learn to be a hipster, and I'm gonna get those manic pixie dream girls. I mean, that term wasn't around then. I was like, yeah, it's totally gonna work. Hasn't worked out yet. So,
at one point, he mentions the mixtape he made for her, and like I can envision that mixtape, how he like thought about it so long, and it wasn't even just songs he loved and wanted to share with her. It was songs that he wanted to use to convey how interesting he was.
Right, absolutely.
Which I've done, like, you know, when I was young, absolutely done that.
Well, and the fact that he made her a mixtape is hipster enough, right?
Right.
You hear some music I think you'd like. It's like, here's some music that I hope makes you think I'm deep and, you know, makes you like me more.
As you said, Zach, like even they use it to tell the story to the fact that I think like when the big scene is happening, I think it's the Regina Spektor hero. It's literally the words are narrating his feelings because he is just so crushed. He can't talk. You know, he's just so beside himself that they actually have the song tell you exactly Tom's inner monologue until he just completely goes out and the world wipes away and he has his kind of nervous breakdown. But yeah, it's just, I mean, it just feels, again, I sound like a broken record, but it seems like such a well-crafted film for being a Marc Webb film. Yeah. And, you know, I have nothing against this guy, but it's just like, this is the guy that made the Andrew Garfield Spider-Mans. He made Paul Giamatti the Rhino, for God's sake.
Like a lot of it is the fact that it was good writing, right? Like, those Spider-Man movies had not great writing, and this movie had really great writing. And also, I think it was because it was a collaboration with his brother. I think that makes it something special. And, you know, when you can collaborate with someone that you're that close to, like, things turn out better.
It makes it personal in a way that something else isn't.
You're right.
And you were talking about, like, the music narrating. Even the two karaoke songs he's doing, when he's the drunken karaoke with the blind date one, where he's doing the Clash's "Train in Vain," which is an amazing song. But like, I mean, talk about like just a train wreck as he's doing it. And then when he does the first karaoke in front of Summer, where he does "Here Comes the Man" with the Pixies. I mean, like, just an absolute stomper of a song,
right?
But it's also kind of like him stating to her that he's there. He's like trying to communicate that as well. The music here is fantastic.
He's just spraying his hipster pheromones right in your face.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As an aside, I'd like to say that I really enjoyed Jeffrey Arend doing "I'm Proud to Be an American." And they had to like take him off stage. Like that scene was great.
Well, you know, in his character is pretty toxic the entire movie too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like if that came out today, he would absolutely be talking about posting on Reddit in the r/incel sub.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, there are definitely some dated insults at things in this movie. Like I think at one point, like someone's like, "Well, no, that's gay," like in like a negative connotation, and I'm like, yeah. It's like you couldn't get away with that today. You shouldn't have been able to get away with it then, but
sure.
I don't know.
Jeffrey Arnett's character, Mackenzie, is kind of a shithead. And then on the flip side, Paul, the other friend, he's got, you know, a great relationship. He's got his stuff together. So he has this kind of like angel and devil thing going on his shoulders, where, you know, one's just kind of being like, be selfish and screw whoever you want and blah, blah, blah. And then the other one's just like, you know, this kind of telling him the same thing, but from a lot more wholesome standpoint. So I like that he had those two very extremes. And talking about two very extremes, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the film Don Juan, another Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but this is like the yin to that yang, where Don Juan's it's another film that on surface value it's like, oh, it's a jack-off movie, like literally, ooh, you know, but it's about a guy that's obsessed with porn and about you know, working out and making himself better and all this stuff. But that's until he meets someone and has that kind of transformative moment in his life. And I feel like these two movies are extremely similar. I think that this is definitely more of an enjoyable film. That one's more kind of a dick and fart joke, but the message is still the same. Where you know, in the other film, it's just it's again just being very selfish. He's basically a Tom character, just to more extreme. He's just so in love with himself until he finally kind of meets someone and matures him in a way that he couldn't without it. So I don't know. Joseph Gordon-Levitt just picks these great. I mean, you think about him. He's been in like he was, I guess, a young teen actor. I don't think he was so much like a childhood actor, but he's been in movies since like 10 Things I Hate About You, which he was great in. He's always that kind of like that guy that you're rooting for, and this is like exactly the role that you imagine those characters growing up to being.
Yeah, I think it's kind of funny too with his character in Third Rock from the Sun,
right?
Being like so like trying to get with women and stuff too. I think it's kind of interesting.
I think he played the childhood version of Brad Pitt in A River Runs Through It too, if I remember right.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, he's had a long career, but he's always been a pretty interesting guy. But I think this was that first role that made him kind of pop to me.
Oh yeah.
In the scene for me, you talked about the split screen scene. The one that killed me when I was first watching the movie, that really like made me pay attention and kind of fall in love with the movie, was the next morning after the first night that they have sex, when he leaves the apartment and it kind of busts into that musical.
Yeah.
That's amazing, because that's the next day after you leave that great date. That's like, I don't know how else you would express that visually. That's it. Like, that nails it in a way that I've never seen any other movie nail that kind of thing before.
It was the Walk of Fame, right? It was the other side of the coin.
Yeah.
It starts off with him like looking in the reflection in the car, and Han Solo winks back at him. And of course it's Han Solo, because like when you're that dude, when you're that age, that's who you are relating to. That's who you kind of admire for all his flaws. It makes perfect sense. Everyone congratulating him, like that scene, the way it just escalates and escalates and escalates, it's amazing.
I definitely know that feeling. I've never had like a flash mob, jump out behind me, but like, I've gone on these great dates, I'll drop this girl off, and I'm like on the way home, I'm just like playing music just super loud, and I'm like, yes, and like it's something that I think a lot of people can really relate to, and Dan's right, like that's probably the best representation of that I've seen on a movie.
I think you have to kind of be that age too, or younger.
Sure.
At some point in life, stuff doesn't quite hit you like that. I think there's a reason people don't fall in love with bands when they're 35, like they were 25 or 15. I think you hit a certain point in your life, and maybe you don't feel things quite at the level you once did.
Right.
So that's one thing I love. I just remember being there, and that was a very nostalgic thing for me. That feeling that, and also like you're probably not going to like be there again because your brain and body don't work that way anymore.
Mm-hmm. It's like the first time seeing the Avengers on screen together. You're just like, oh my God, you're on a total high. Yeah. Conversely, that scene now is the only one that bothers me. Although I get exactly what you guys are saying, but it only bothers me simply for the fact of like, it reminds me of Tobey Maguire dancing in the Spider-Man movies. And it's not even this film's fault. It's another film that kills it for me, but I'm just like, oh God, it's like Spider-Man 3 all over again.
I think it's the Spider-Man one, you're supposed to kind of think he's a goon. This one, it just felt more like I was supposed to relate to him and not kind of be embarrassed for him. But I know I totally see the parallel now that you mention it. In that scene, it kind of jumps out, but you notice it beforehand too. I'm just genuinely impressed how Joseph Gordon-Levitt manages to look cool wearing khakis and a sweater vest the entire movie. But man, dude pulls it off. He looks like he looks genuinely like stylish and hip wearing that outfit the entire movie.
Yeah,
I used to dress like that in my 20s, and I'm not sure I looked that good.
Like we said, he's just so into smelling his own farts the entire film until he has that moment of growth, and then he's just like, oh shit, I gotta go buy a suit, I gotta buy some pomade, I gotta do my hair, and then look, the first day on the job, and he meets Autumn. This is just like, I mean, we could go on all night about this, but this is who would I recommend this film to? Probably every single person. Like, if you want a break from the norm, from romantic comedies or anything, or just love that coming of age style, which I so am into, this is probably the best one. Like, in my opinion, this is the pinnacle film, because it just has so many layers, so many things to, even 10 years, it just had its 10-year anniversary, and we're still debating it, what's real, what's not, you don't even know, because, and I have jaded, like, I watch so many movies a week, because all the movie shows I do, but it's just like, I still am, like, surprised sometimes and pick up on different things, or maybe, find different meanings to what they're trying to convey in this film. To on surface level, a lot of people just saw it and just said, oh, that was a good rom-com, that was a good date night film. And if that's what you want to take away, hey, good on you. Like, this film it's a lot of different things. It lets you mold it to exactly what you want it to be. But I mean, if anyone's gone through something like this, as at least everyone on this panel has, and I'm sure 80% of the world has, then, I mean, it's almost uncomfortably accurate with the emotions and just being able to transport you back into these specific moments of time in your life. These very, moldable, transformative, raw emotion times that you have all these feelings you don't know what to do, and this film just kind of puts it right back in you, and you feel young again. But yeah, that's 500 Days of Summer. I want to thank my esteemed panel. This was a ton of fun. Zack Taylor, thank you so much, man, from Commander Social. Yeah, where can everyone find you again?
We're at Commander Social on Twitter, and I'm at Z4CK38.
Excellent stuff. Dana Roach from EDH Rec Podcast and all the other things. I'll let him tell you what he does.
You can find me on Twitter at Dana Roach, and EDH Recast. You can find us on Spotify. You can also find Commander Central on Spotify, iTunes. They're all on any place you would look for podcasts, a couple different times a week. So I'm always willing to talk both at you there and with you on Twitter if you're looking for a conversation about magic or movies or anything.
Perfect.
For sure.
Thank you, gentlemen, once again. If you want to find me on social media talking about movies or cult films or Magic the Gathering, anything you want to talk about, I am very accessible at Orzov Dunn on Twitter. You could find me here doing all these shows on They Said, We Said, so please go ahead, leave a like, describe the channel, and then you could describe it to your friends while subscribing is the correct term. If you want to listen to this in podcast form, you can over on iTunes, Spotify. Leave me 5 apples or whatever the hell, however you rate these type of things. But until next time, go watch this film because it's just pleasant.
Penis.
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 There's kids around.
There are no kids around.
Penis.
Penis.
You having fun?
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing you do with the puma, isn't it?
Oh, we rarely left the room.